Hello there guys. Today I've got a review of a brand new kit for you from Verifier. This is the 1/350 scale World War II heavy cruiser IJN Takao. Unlike the previous IJN ship from Verifier which I reviewed, this is the deluxe version. Now the Takao was laid down in 1927 and launched in 1932, and it's a very interesting looking ship. It's got that angled funnel at the rear there. And I always think that her lines look quite modern. The angles make it, to me, look a bit like a sort of a modern stealth ship. Quite different from other ships of her era. The Takao does have a long list of operations and engagements during World War II. She supported the landings on Luzon in the Philippines in 1941. And in early 1942 she was sent to disrupt the shipping from the Dutch East Indies, modern-day Indonesia, where she sunk many ships including a Dutch freighter, several British minesweepers, the US Navy destroyer Pillsbury, a Royal Australian Navy sloop, and multiple Dutch freighters. She also captured a number of other Dutch freighters. In June 1942 she was involved in the invasion of the Aleutian Islands, and according to Wikipedia, during this time she actually shot down a B-17. The Takao was also involved in the naval battle of Guadalcanal, the Battle of the Santa Cruz Islands, and later the evacuation of Guadalcanal. In mid-1944, Takao was in the area of Singapore and Brunei, and it was in this area in October of that year that she was attacked by the USS Data. Otago and Maya were sunk during this engagement, and Takao was badly damaged. Although she did manage to limp back to Brunei and then to Singapore, the damage was deemed to be unrepairable, and she would never set sail again. Instead, she would remain in Singapore moored as a floating anti-aircraft battery. Towards the end of the war, as Allied forces approached Singapore, a midget submarine attack was launched against the Takao to ensure that she couldn't interfere with any recapture of Singapore. Lieutenant Ian Edward Fraser and leading seaman James Joseph McGuinness piloted midget submarines into the harbour and used limpet mines to badly damage the cruiser. Both were later awarded the Victoria Cross for their actions, and in fact McGuinness was the only native of Northern Ireland to win the Victoria Cross during World War II. Japanese forces in Singapore surrendered to the British on September the 21st, 1945, and Takao was captured at that point. She was then used as a target ship and sunk in late 1946 off the coast of Malaysia, or Malaya as it was at the time. So let's take a look at the kit. As I mentioned, this is a deluxe version. We get that beautiful artwork on the front there. I really do like Verifier's box art. It's also a very big box. As you can see, I can barely get it in frame. And it's also very sturdy. As we open it up, we can see that we've got the instruction manual on top. The instruction manual will cover the building of the standard version, and then we have this separate sheet here which covers the detail up parts for the deluxe version. That will make building a little bit more difficult because you'll need to follow through with the standard version, but just make sure whenever you're adding things that there aren't 3D printed parts or photoetch parts to replace the standard kit parts. The hull is in two parts and is sturdily attached here in this piece of cardboard. And then we've got quite a lot of small sprues underneath here, but actually not that much plastic overall, I feel. Certainly not compared to the Musashi that I reviewed previously. If we start with the instructions, we've got a history of the Takao on the front page, and then a sprue map inside. Even the standard kit, as you can see here, does include 3 photo etch frets. The first step in the instructions is likely to be lots of drilling of holes. As you can see, we've got a huge number there. One thing we don't get in the deluxe version of this kit, which we did get in the Musashi, is the wooden deck. But there's a good reason we don't get a wooden deck in this one. So the first part here, of course, is to put the hull together with those cross braces, and the rudder and the shafts as well. I'd probably be tempted to leave the shafts off for now because they're likely to get broken while you're building this kit. Over the page here we suddenly switch to portrait, And here you can see why we don't get a wooden deck. So that crisscross pattern on the deck there is implemented with a photo etch piece. And essentially, from my understanding, the deck has almost like a lino floor non-slip surface on the top of it, which on the real ship is held down by metal battens. And the photo etch there is designed to replicate those battens. And as I say, that's part of the standard kit, you get that by default. You can also see here that Verifier use a variety of colours just to highlight the pieces that you've added. We've got some 25mm triple MG mounts to add. We start to build up the superstructure on the next page, and this is one of the main parts which will be heavily detailed with photo etch if you go down the deluxe version. So I'll show you a comparison between those in a moment. We build up the masts. I should probably expect these also have a lot of photo etch and metal replacement parts. And then onto that distinctive angled after funnel. Again, I'll show you a close-up of the parts in a moment, but there's a lot of detail, a lot of really fine rivet detail on that piece straight out of the box. The aircraft deck is built up next, and again we've got photo etch detail there as standard. So quite a lot of photo etch bending here, even on the regular kit. And you can start to see the deck getting very busy there. A very colourful bridge there. And we get some aircraft as well. We've got a Pete and a Jake float planes. Building up the turrets, of which Takao has 5. And then you can see here the final few details in these CAD images. And it does look quite beautiful actually. There's a huge amount of detail in this kit. Here we have the single paint scheme. This represents the Takao in 1944 and essentially is overall grey. The only image I have seen of Takao in a camouflage scheme is this image here of her being captured by the British in 1945 in Singapore. So perhaps that was a camouflage scheme that was added to her when she became a floating anti-aircraft battery. The paint references that we see here, I'm told, are Verifier's own range of paints. Certainly, although the C numbers look like Mr. Hobby paints, they don't correspond with the colours of Mr. Hobby, so I'm not quite sure what they are. And I believe the Japanese used different greys depending on which shipyard the ships were laid down in. And of course we've got some extra paint details there for the aircraft and for the lifeboats. And to be honest, if we look at just the plastic parts at first, we can still see there's a great amount of detail on them. This is one of the sides for the bridge. I'm actually holding it upside down there because you can see there's a door there in the side. Lots of very fine detail visible. Equally here on this platform you can see we've got a very fine non-slip texture. Obviously any texture is going to be overdone at this scale, but perhaps better than just looking completely smooth. And here is the side of the hull itself. Very fine detail. We've got the portholes, some of which have been covered over. Very detailed indeed. If we have a look now at the instructions for the detail upset, we have this huge A3 sheet here. On the front of it we have all of the parts that we get, so many metal barrels, poles, masts, etc. Lots of resin parts including blast bags, some of the turrets are replaced, the anti-aircraft turrets are replaced with resin parts, and so on. And the nice thing is, the instructions actually tell you what each of these parts is. Some of these are additions, so for example I don't believe the standard kit has blast bags, but we'll check that. and others are upgrades. So for example, the binoculars there do come in the standard kit but in plastic. And it will be some parts like that, and I'll show you a comparison later on, where the difference may be minimal. In the Deluxe version we also get an extra 6 photo etch frets. So you can see that includes things like the railings, and if we go over the page, here is a good example of us adding that photo etch detail. So you can see here on the bridge superstructure, lots of extra pieces, railings, ladders, grills, things like this, just to add that extra level of detail to your kit. Likewise here on the funnel, although the funnel itself is well detailed, we get the extra photo etch for the supports, some of the walkways, the railings and things like this, which really bring it to that extra sort of dimension. What we also get, and I'll show you the pieces in a moment, is we replace the plastic grill over the top of the funnel with a resin version, which is much finer. What kind of difference will that make? Well, this is the plastic funnel, and if I twist it properly, you might be able to just catch the light there on some of that rivet detail. So that's really well detailed on its own. This is the plastic guard over the top of the funnel. Actually with a little bit of flash there on that part 34. And then this is the 3D printed resin equivalent. And as you can see, that's clearly much finer than would be able to get the injection plastic. So that's quite a nice upgrade. That's my kind of upgrade, I think. You just snip those parts carefully off the supports and then put them in place. No photo etch bending required. Here you can see the overall CAD image of the ship, showing all those Deluxe version photo etch extras. So let's have a quick side-by-side comparison. Here are the turrets. This is the number 1 gun, as you can see, in plastic. And then if we move over to the Deluxe version, you can see we've got various editions. The ladder up the side and the railings at the top in photo etch, metal barrels, and then those resin blast bags. Similarly, if we move on to one of the observation platforms around the bridge, standard version here we have lots of binoculars made up of plastic parts. In the Deluxe version we have a straight swap for those using resin parts, but we also get the railings there, which are absent from the plastic version and are quite important, I guess, in that area of the ship. And we get the photo etch ladders, which again are absent completely from the plastic version. There's also like a photo etched sort of non-slip area there, that part C12. As another example, here are the plastic parts for the binoculars, which are, as you can imagine, tiny. And then here are the 3D printed resin replacements for them. It'll be quite hard for you to see these, I think, because they're quite dark and they've got a lot of supports and packaging resin around them. But if I do try to bring them side by side, they are slightly sharper than the plastic parts, but perhaps not significantly so. So there we go, guys. That was a quick look at the brand new 1/350 scale Verifier IJN Takao. As I say, a brand new 2025 tooling. As with the Musashi, which I reviewed before, the Deluxe version clearly adds a huge amount of detail, and certainly a lot of that photo etch bending and so on is something that would really challenge my skills, personally. In fact, even putting the railing around the Prince of Wales from Tamiya, I have struggled a little bit not to get that damaged and so on during the rest of the build process. That said, I would be quite tempted to build a standard version of one of these kits and maybe pinch a couple of parts from the Deluxe version in some places. One of the other difficulties I think you'll have if you're building the Deluxe version is the fact that you have those 2 instruction books. So you're going to have to really carefully go through the standard version book and probably mark out every single step or even every piece that needs to be replaced by a deluxe version piece, so that you don't mess something up during the build process. The good news is, perhaps because they're both designed by Verifier at the same time, there seems to be very little in the way of sanding off plastic details in order to replace them with photo etch details, which you often do get if you've got a manufacturer's kit and then a third-party photo etch detail upset. So that is a bonus. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this quick review. If you did, please give this video a like and leave a comment below. I will be back soon with another video, but until then I'd like to say thank you to all of you for watching. Special thanks to my YouTube members and Patreon supporters. And until next time, have fun modelling.